Thriving on surprise, smart futures for sustainable growth. The best way to start with this topic, which it's around everything that we do in our life, is to begin with the most astonishing wildcard moment of all, you. Why you? Think about it for a moment. Two souls got together at some point. What is the probability of those two individuals to get together? A spark, a moment, a kiss, a look into the eyes, a word that triggered the first kiss. And since then, out of millions of possibilities, one was sufficient for that moment, what we call the capture moment, the potential of the beginning of a wonderful journey, a journey each and every one of you went through, became months of hidden processes, changes, systems that were forming inside our bodies, self-differentiating, systems that were integrating with each other, what we call the deep transient moment, to eventually the moment of no return. That's the final moment of that particular episode, the deep capture moment. A self-organizing system finding stability in this new world. We have all gone through this process. And today we will be learning about this model, how we went through from spark to self, the person we are, and we call this sustainable disruptive growth. And disruption is defining our life from the very beginning, from that very first spark. That's a transient moment, that kiss, that word, the capture, the fertilization that created everything possible for multiples of processes that help to create who we are and to be born. This model is fascinating, but it's not just about biology. It's also about innovation. Companies are born, startups, ideas, the spark that becomes the new product, the new service. Public organizations, new ministries, the ministries of AI, societies, countries that are being born. So from that first spark, we are creating a complete new world that didn't exist. And because thriving on surprise is not just biology, it's about strategy. And this is not just theory. This is something that we go through every single day of our life. It doesn't stop the day you are born. You go through this process, these loops, again and again through your whole life. I was born in Caracas. And then I also have a particular setting for my growth. Both of my parents are mathematicians. My mother, professor in geometry, and my father, a professor in topology. So I grew up where science was breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Even our snacks came with some kind of equations. Solving patterns and problems was every day. When I was 8, my mother decided to do her PhD in Sao Paulo. That was what I could define today as a transient moment. I opened my eyes and I discovered a huge world. And that changed completely the way I saw the world. But then when I was 15, my father decided to do his PhD and he chose Budapest. We moved to Hungary. A new alphabet with a forest of vowels that I had to learn from Spanish to Hungarian. That changed completely the way I saw the world again. So that was captured. Systems thinking became, by default, the way I saw the world. And then by 20, they say to me, sorry, we finished the PhD. We are going back home. What is home? Hungary was my home already. And then at some point over spaghetti dinner, one day we had an idea, a spark. Can we develop a software, a platform to do everything in Foresight online? And we did. United Nations discovered us and they saw a surprise, and that surprise took me back to Europe, deep transient. And I was implementing and training many different ministries, government agencies, United Nations bodies, European Commission, different organizations on how to do foresight online. And that was the moment of deep transient, learning deeply, shaping what lasts. And then came one moment when in one of those trainings, I paired together with the University of Manchester. The Manchester colleagues were doing the theory, I was doing the practice, the software, the IT, and then bang, deep capture. I was offered a PhD in Manchester, and then I developed several frameworks that are highly cited and used in the foresight literature. And today I will be sharing some of these frameworks and some of these methods with you so that you can walk away from here with a better understanding on how you can thrive on surprise as well in the future. Because every single one of you also wake up every morning and you have huge surprises. Some of them are very positive, some are not that positive, and you need to navigate through them. So today you will walk away with three main instruments that hopefully you will learn from. The first is the so-called Foresight Diamond. The second is a smart futures framework that you can apply to your personal life. I have done so, and to your professional life. And the third is the Sustainable Disruptive Growth model, and I will give you a flavor of it. When we talk about foresight and the future, we're talking about anything, any process that consists of at least three principles. The principles, of course, of looking into the future, prospective. Otherwise, you are not doing foresight. The principle of doing so collaboratively. You co-create those scenarios, and then you do this to shape something. Your personal policy, your company policy, your organization. If you're doing any of these three things, you're doing what we call foresight, and you can do it in a fully fledged, more organized way if you bring to the equation evidence, so your prospective use is informed by where you are. I'm standing here, and where I'm coming from there. So you know the data, you know what to expect, and you can extrapolate as well. If it's informed by a coordination that multiple actions you want to do involve the quadruple helix: government, business, academia, and civil society, organized or not, citizens. And it's also informed by multiple disciplines: social sciences, natural sciences, engineering, and the whole range of Frascati type of taxonomies that we use in science. Now, the first tool is to think about all of these possibilities about the future in a coordinated way. The Foresight Diamond, there are 33 methods there that I have used through my career over 25 years in different projects. And these are methods to pick from, and there are many more. But the beauty of this is that it helps you to think that you need to bring in evidence. Of course, too much evidence can get you drawn in data, but you need to know where you are, where you're coming from. You need to bring the expertise in, but too much expertise might create the challenges that you might be inheriting, the assumptions of the future. And then too much interaction as well, on the other hand, can bring consensus without courage to take the bold decisions that you need in order to change the status quo. And too much creativity can detach the reality, the ideas, from the evidence that we have. So it is important to think bold and to think creatively and to understand where you are and how to get there, to build a roadmap, what we call an action roadmap. So the Foresight Diamond has been a tool, a framework that I have been using for many years to orchestrate those four corners, because all four need to be taken into account. The second framework, the Smart Futures, also applies to your personal life, to your professional life. Of course, you need to decide what you want to do, the objectives. It's part of a jigsaw, your life jigsaw, your organization's jigsaw. You need to decide what really matters. Over what time horizon are you looking into the future of the next 10 years? 20 years. I have done projects with 100 years time horizon. How to live on Mars 100 years from now, 600,000 people. That was one request from the UAE Space Agency. And the idea of doing that, which might sound pretty crazy today, is to decide today what type of technologies we want and we need to invest on. We need to invest today to achieve that particular vision. And this happens with your own future as well. And then you need to ask who will be in that particular future, who to mobilize, who are the champions that are supporting you, to anticipate, to imagine those desirable futures, the undesirable ones, the plausible futures, and the signposts that will help you to do what? If you stay at this level, you are not doing foresight, because foresight is about as well policy making. It's about action. If you stay until here, you're doing what we call in the literature horizon scanning. But if you want to transform this into action, then you recommend actions today. What are the best options you have now? And what are the trade-offs? And you are entering into the heart of foresight, but the real heart is transformation. You want to act today and recommend to transform the future and transform the present because you have a roadmap. You know where you want to go. And that's a smart way of thinking about the futures, and that's why the framework is called smart futures. But you can be smarter too. Who doesn't want to be smarter? Every day we should wake up aiming to be smarter. And how do we learn? Well, we learn the best, unfortunately, from our mistakes. You can learn as well from your successes, so you need to evaluate and you need to renew the cycle. You evaluate constantly, and being smarter means learning, means evaluating. You explore the future, you shape the future and the present, and then you learn from it, and it's a cycle. Now, going back to the sustainable disruptive growth models that I was introducing you to, that flicker, that moment, that spark changes many aspects. And then you have the attractor, the moment that captures you, and you say you want to act upon that idea, or you want to do something about this. And then this attractor changes many aspects of your decision making, many aspects of the way you see the future, and you might enter into a deep transient mode where with long configurations, some of them hidden that you don't know, your subconsciousness, you go to bed with some ideas and you wake up, an aha moment. That change is the same way when we're born, no way back. You change the way you think, the way you act. You created that company. You innovated. You created that particular product or service. So the takeaway from this model is that every disruption begins with a whisper, with an idea, before it changes the world, your world and the world outside you. Thriving on surprise means understanding this, recognizing the flicker, but at the same time acting upon that so that you can be the main driver of your future. And then you should ask yourself, then how can I use this? How can I apply that sustainable disruptive growth in my life? First, understand the context. What are the forces or the trends that are shaping your life today and in the future? And analyze the context very well. You need to understand the people dimension. Who's ready? Who's resistant? Who can lead the shift? What are the aptitudes and the attitudes of the people? And you need to understand the processes behind how to do it. How can we test it? How can we prototype and pilot and adapt and make it safely? And last but not least, we need to understand what type of impact we want to have, how to endure, how to make it sustainable. So the takeaways from understanding and from applying this model is that growth and life is not linear. We are moving in multiple directions. With multiple people, we are interacting with multiple thoughts and multiple areas. It's interdisciplinary and I believe interplanetary as well. There are many signals and energy coming. Disruption is not the end of stability. We need to look at disruption as the beginning of evolution or revolution in our thoughts, in our being. And we do this normally. We normally scan this in many processes, in many projects, by trying to understand and track those sparks and understand whether the ideas are helping us to see some issues, whether they are continuing, whether they are ending, whether they are re-emerging or emerging. And these are frameworks that we use to understand and analyze what we call weak signals, like the continual increase of online shopping, like, for example, the growing number of protests that we can see when we read the news about AI. And then what we need to do is to think, what are the possible wildcards associated to each of these? And the possibilities are endless. It requires thinking, changing the way we see the future. So they are interpretation bounded, they are situation bounded, and they are assessment because we need to prioritize them. And to do those systematically, to understand this, as I mentioned, the context dimension is important. We need to ask ourselves tough questions. How to shape the pace of change, how to shape and how to see further into the future. how to fuel this ambition with some resources that we have, and then how to grow our minds, how to build the competences and skills, meaning the aptitude, and the right attitude to inspire with empathy, with compassion that we need in order to achieve collaboration that is necessary. And then how to turn the ideas into experiments we can learn from, and how to weave the networks. And we are today creating many more networks, and hopefully we can come up with new ideas, that spark that will trigger a complete new process to achieve the transformations that are helping us to evolve, to be more sustainable, to make tomorrow grateful for today, for the decisions we are making today. And that's a roadmap, and that's an approach, a framework that I have applied in many of the projects, and hopefully I can transfer to you today. Now it's your turn to think a little bit about the future. Think about one signal, one number, anything that keeps popping up, a behavior that you have noticed recently. Now, imagine a wildcard, what we define as a low probability, high impact event. It can be positive, transforming your life. It can be very negative too. Anything, just imagine. And now, what would you do today to prevent that if it's negative, or to achieve it if it's positive? When you think this way, that's how you thrive on surprise. It's that simple. You need to practice it when you wake up in the morning, or when you hear something, or when you see a signal, and then you are afraid of that. Okay, then think about worst case scenario. That's a negative wildcard. Or best case scenario. That's a positive wildcard. Then what do I have to do today to achieve that? Isn't that simple? Well, that's the way you thrive on surprise. It is really important to sense early, and then to make your own mind, to rebuild capabilities, not to focus on resentment, but to how you can grow yourself with those disruptions that are affecting you not so positively, and how to redefine yourself and your future. Out of many of those setbacks, I have learned, and I have created new ventures, and I have created new centers and new opportunities. So pain became a pattern, and the pattern became practice. And that's sustainable growth. And we should practice it. And disruptions have even rewritten my passport, as I was already introduced here. Just 3 weeks ago, I became Austrian. One of the friends who happens to be here, Martin, thank you, we were having a friendly conversation, and Martin said to me, "Hey, have you heard of this law that was introduced in Austria? Your grandfather left for Venezuela. He was persecuted. Why don't you look at it? Stay here, that spark, that idea." And I decided to apply. And just 3 weeks ago, I became Austrian. My 4 kids as well. And this is my first talk as an Austrian in Austria. Isn't that amazing? That's renewal. That's sustainable disruptive growth. But my favorite of all these disruptions, and these final surprises for you, the wildcard that changed my life was not in any of the database and didn't come from this systematic process. Monica. I saw her and I had that feeling. Sometimes there are things that you don't know. You cannot use science to describe this energy. But 2 weeks later, I proposed. And who's crazier? The one who proposes or the one who says yes? Don't answer. But she said yes, and 6 months later we were married, and you fast forward 19 years, and we have brought to this world 4 wonderful surprises. And the most beautiful and sustainable growth of all is love multiplied. It is important for you to understand that thinking about surprises is something that transforms everything that you do. And the last surprise is that this year, we published a paper on towards a sustainable disruptive growth model that I have shared with you today. And the co-authors are my parents. And the framework hopefully will help all of us and you as well to understand how disruptions can change our world. So my final call for you is that whether there is something, a challenge, an idea, a person that gives you that feeling, do not avoid or raise this idea. Just orchestrate it, manage it, balance the diamond, use creativity, use evidence, use expertise and interaction. Run smart, but evaluate and renew. Be smarter, try to be smarter. Convert those issues into action through action road mapping. Watch the thresholds. There are thresholds in everything in life. And above all of this, what is more important is to continuously monitor and scan the horizon. Question the assumptions, always. And then rehearse disruption before it happens. Think about it. Close your eyes. What is the best case scenario, the worst case scenario, and what you can do today to make that happen? Because thriving on surprise is not luck. It's a learnable skill. And today, I have given you some tools. Hopefully the tools that you need. Thank you very much.